Gary Rossington, finally, confirmed the rumors about Ronnie Van Zant's tragic end. Ronnie Van Zant, the fearless frontman of Lynyrd Skynyrd, was more than just a rock star. He was a symbol of Southern pride and rebellion. Behind legendary anthems like Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird lay a man full of vision, contradictions, and untold struggles. His bond with Gary Rossington, the last surviving founding member, revealed stories that fans never imagined. Decades later, Rossington finally broke his silence, uncovering chilling details about the tragic plane crash that ended Ronnie's life at just 29, a loss that forever changed rock history. Ronnie's early life and music. Ronnie Van Zant, born on January 15, 1948 in Jacksonville, Florida, came from humble beginnings that would later shape both his character and his music. He was the third of 5 children in a working-class family, raised in an environment where hard work and perseverance were essential for survival. From a young age, Ronnie displayed traits that defined him throughout his life: sincerity, determination, and a strong will. These qualities would eventually carry him from the rough neighborhoods of Jacksonville to the international stage as the legendary frontman of Lynyrd Skynyrd. His earliest passions were not rooted in music, but in sports. Ronnie dreamed of becoming a professional baseball player and played in local leagues, where his competitive spirit and natural leadership made him stand out. Baseball gave him discipline, teamwork, and the thrill of competition. Alongside baseball, he also had a keen interest in boxing, a sport that mirrored his resilience and fighting spirit. The discipline he learned in sports later translated into his approach to music, where he combined toughness with creativity in a way that was uniquely his own. Yet, fate had a different path prepared for him. Growing up in Jacksonville, Ronnie was surrounded by the sounds of the South, the mournful melodies of blues, the storytelling power of country, and the raw energy of rock and roll. Legends like Hank Williams, Muddy Waters, and Elvis Presley became his early idols, shaping his artistic imagination. What began as a fascination soon turned into a calling. Ronnie discovered a natural gift for songwriting, one that allowed him to transform his life experiences into powerful narratives. Unlike many musicians who wrote abstract or romanticized lyrics, Ronnie's songs reflected real life, the struggles of working people, the bonds of family, and the dreams and disappointments of the American South. Music became his way of telling stories, of giving voice to those who lived lives similar to his own. His lyrics captured both the grit and beauty of everyday existence, resonating deeply with audiences who recognized themselves in his words. Thus, Ronnie's childhood and early passions formed the foundation of his identity as a musician. The hard-working roots of his family, his toughness on the baseball field and in the boxing ring, and his exposure to the rich sounds of Southern music all combined to mold him into a unique storyteller. Long before he became the leader of Lynyrd Skynyrd, Ronnie Van Zant was already carrying within him the spirit of the South, a spirit that would later explode onto the global stage through songs like Freebird and Sweet Home Alabama. Ronnie Van Zant's Skynyrd journey. Building on the tough but inspiring roots of his childhood, Ronnie Van Zant carried his determination into the creation of one of the most iconic bands in American rock history, Lynyrd Skynyrd. In the late 1960s, in Jacksonville, Florida, Ronnie joined forces with Gary Rossington, Alan Collins, Larry Junstrom, and Bob Burns to form the group. What started as young friends jamming together quickly transformed into a powerful unit with a distinct identity. Their unusual name, Lynyrd Skynyrd, was a tongue-in-cheek reference to their strict high school gym teacher, Lynyrd Skynyrd, who often criticized the boys for their long hair. The humor behind the name reflected the rebellious yet deeply Southern spirit that would define their music. From the very beginning, the band's style stood out. They blended rock, blues, and country into a raw, heartfelt sound that became known as Southern rock. Ronnie's voice and lyrics were at the center of this identity, capturing the pride, struggles, and dreams of the American South. Their debut album in 1973, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, propelled them onto the world stage, with tracks like Freebird, a soaring anthem of freedom and longing, and Simple Man, a heartfelt ode to family values and humility. The band cemented its place in rock history. These songs weren't just hits, they became cultural statements, embodying the values of strength, resilience, and independence that Southern audiences held dear. As Lynyrd Skynyrd's fame grew, they became more than just a band. They were a symbol of Southern pride. Their concerts were celebrations of community and rebellion, with Ronnie standing as the driving force on stage. His charisma, sincerity, and storytelling ability made him not only a frontman, but also the soul of the group. Fans across the United States embraced Skynyrd as the voice of ordinary working-class people, those who longed for freedom while holding tightly to tradition and identity. However, success came with its own burdens. The band's schedule grew relentless, with tours that kept them on the road for months at a time, far from their families and homes. The pressures of fame and constant performance took a toll, leading to personal conflicts and internal clashes. Like many rock bands of the era, Lynyrd Skynyrd struggled with the chaos that accompanied sudden stardom. Yet through it all, Ronnie Van Zant remained the group's anchor. He was more than a singer. He was a leader who reminded his bandmates of their purpose, encouraging them to focus on the music and the bond they had built together. His leadership was not about domination, but about unity, making him the spiritual center of Lynyrd Skynyrd. The journey of Lynyrd Skynyrd under Ronnie's leadership was both exhilarating and exhausting, filled with triumphs and challenges. Their rise symbolized not just musical achievement, but also a cultural movement, showing how Southern identity could be celebrated through rock and roll. For Ronnie, every song, every performance, and every night on tour was another step in carrying the voice of his people to the world. His journey with Lynyrd Skynyrd was not only about building a successful band, but about creating a legacy that continues to resonate decades later. The tragedy of October 20th, 1977. The rise of Lynyrd Skynyrd under Ronnie Van Zant's leadership seemed unstoppable, but fate delivered its cruelest blow on October 20th, 1977, the day that would forever change rock history. On that evening, the band boarded a Convair CV-240, an aging aircraft with a troubling history of mechanical issues. The plane had already shown signs of fuel system problems and irregular consumption. But despite repeated warnings, the band and crew pressed forward. Time constraints, financial pressures, and the grueling demands of touring left them with little choice. For Ronnie and his bandmates, it was supposed to be just another flight on their way from Greenville, South Carolina, to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for the next show. Instead, it became their final journey together. As the Convair CV-240 took to the skies, the mood inside was a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. Some members of the band reportedly expressed concern about the aircraft's condition, while others tried to shrug it off with jokes. Ronnie himself, ever stoic and fatalistic, had confided to friends in the days before that he had no fear of dying young. Just hours later, those haunting words would take on tragic meaning. Midway through the flight, disaster struck. The aircraft's fuel supply, already unpredictable, was mismanaged and began to run dangerously low. By the time they approached Mississippi airspace, both engines failed completely. The pilots, realizing the horror of their situation, attempted a desperate emergency landing with no runway in sight. Their only option was to guide the powerless plane toward a clearing in the dense woods near Gillsburg. The descent was chaotic and violent. Passengers braced themselves, some screaming, others silent in shock. Seconds later, the aircraft tore through the trees and crashed into the swampy forest. The impact was catastrophic. Ronnie Van Zant, only 29 years old, was killed instantly, along with guitarist Steve Gaines, backup singer Cassie Gaines, the pilot, and the flight engineer. For the surviving members, including Gary Rossington, Alan Collins, and Leon Wilkeson, the wreckage was a nightmare of broken bodies, twisted metal, and unbearable loss. Many were critically injured, their futures uncertain as they struggled amid the destruction. What followed was an extraordinary act of humanity. Local residents from Gillsburg, hearing the horrific noise, rushed into the thick woods without hesitation. Armed with nothing but flashlights and determination, they pulled survivors from the wreckage, offered comfort to the wounded, and carried them through the swamp to waiting ambulances. These ordinary citizens became the first responders in one of rock music's darkest hours, their bravery saving lives that night. The tragedy sent shockwaves across the world. Lynyrd Skynyrd, a band that had risen from the neighborhoods of Jacksonville to embody the spirit of Southern rock, was suddenly silenced. For millions of fans, the loss of Ronnie Van Zant and the Gaines siblings was not just the end of an era, it was the abrupt collapse of a cultural symbol. Songs like Freebird and Sweet Home Alabama took on new weight, transforming from anthems of pride into elegies for those who had been lost. Those survivors eventually regrouped and carried on in different forms. The memory of October 20th, 1977 remained an unhealed scar. It was a reminder of the fragility of life, the risks of the road, and the high price that sometimes comes with chasing dreams. For Ronnie Van Zant, the man who had given voice to Southern rock, the tragedy marked the end of a journey, but the beginning of a legend, one that continues to echo through generations. Mysteries behind the 1977 crash. Even decades after the tragedy of October 20th, 1977, the crash of Lynyrd Skynyrd's plane remains shrouded in mysteries and eerie premonitions. Among the band members, the Convair CV-240 was jokingly nicknamed the Flying Coffin because of its aging structure and repeated technical problems. What began as dark humor soon turned into a chilling prophecy when the aircraft ultimately sealed the fate of Ronnie Van Zant, Steve and Cassie Gaines, and others on board. For the survivors and fans, this cruel coincidence only deepened the sense of dread and destiny surrounding the disaster. One of the most haunting aspects of the tragedy was Ronnie Van Zant's own words, known for his stoic outlook on life. He often told friends that he did not expect to live past the age of 30. This eerie prediction would prove true, as Ronnie died just 5 days before his 30th birthday. On the day of the flight, his attitude seemed almost resigned. Witnesses later recalled him saying, "I'm ready to go," as though he had already accepted his fate. Even in the terrifying final moments, when the engines failed and panic spread through the cabin, Ronnie reportedly remained calm, telling others, "Stay calm. We'll get through this." His composure in the face of death left an unforgettable impression, turning him into a tragic prophet of his own destiny. Theories and debates have swirled around the crash ever since. Some argued that poor maintenance and negligence were to blame, pointing out that the Convair had a history of fuel system problems. Others went further, speculating about hidden motives or conspiracies, though no concrete evidence ever surfaced. The official investigation attributed the crash to fuel exhaustion and mismanagement, but for many, the story felt incomplete. How could such a band, on the brink of greater success, be brought down by such preventable issues? These mysteries and omens became part of the band's enduring legend. For fans, They serve as haunting reminders that Ronnie Van Zant seemed to walk with destiny, a man who sang about life's struggles and freedom, yet appeared to know that his own time would be brief. The image of Ronnie calmly facing death, paired with the band's grim jokes about their flying coffin, turned the tragedy into more than just an accident. It became a myth, blending fact, fate, and folklore into a story that continues to fascinate generations of music lovers. Gary Rossington, Memories and Pain. For Gary Rossington, the last surviving founding member of Lynyrd Skynyrd, the tragedy of October 20th, 1977, was not simply an event in history, but a wound that never healed. Decades after the plane crash, he confessed that the memories were still vivid. It feels like it happened yesterday. The loss of Ronnie Van Zant was not just the death of a bandmate, but the loss of a brother, a confidant, and the very soul of the band. Ronnie's voice, his words, and his leadership had been the heartbeat of Skynyrd, and for Gary, living without him was like walking with a shadow that never left. Gary often recalled the conversations he had with Ronnie in the days before the crash, words that became both a comfort and a burden. Ronnie, known for his stoic acceptance of fate, once told Gary, "If I go someday, make sure our music lives on." Those words became a sacred promise. While others questioned whether Lynyrd Skynyrd should ever continue without Ronnie, Gary carried that responsibility with him. Every note he played and every stage he stood on afterward was a tribute to his fallen friend. He was not simply performing songs. He was keeping a spirit alive, ensuring that Ronnie's presence would never fade from the hearts of fans. Yet the journey was not without pain. Gary admitted to being haunted by survivor's guilt, the nagging question of why he lived while Ronnie, Steve Gaines, and Cassie Gaines did not. He once described it as a weight on his shoulders, something that followed him into every performance and every quiet moment. And yet, it was precisely that pain which fueled his determination. For Gary, each concert was not just entertainment, it was a memorial service, a way of honoring the promise he had made to Ronnie. Skynyrd's music connected generations, honoring Ronnie's spirit, creating an unbreakable bond. In this way, Gary Rossington became the custodian of Lynyrd Skynyrd's soul. He did not only carry forward the music, but also the values Ronnie had embodied: honesty, pride, and resilience. Though the pain never disappeared, Gary transformed it into something powerful, a legacy that outlived tragedy. For him, Ronnie was never truly gone. He was present in every song, every fan's cheer, and every moment of silence that followed the music. Through Gary's devotion, the promise made in friendship became eternal, ensuring that Lynyrd Skynyrd would forever be more than a band. It would be a living memory of brotherhood, survival, and Southern pride. Ronnie Van Zant's eternal legacy. Ronnie Van Zant's legacy lives on through the timeless music he created and the spirit he embodied. Songs like Freebird and Sweet Home Alabama have become more than classics. They are cultural symbols of Southern pride and resilience. His words in Simple Man continue to inspire listeners to live honestly and simply, reminding generations of the values he held close. Beyond his own era, artists such as Kid Rock and Eric Church have cited Ronnie as a guiding influence in their work. Lynyrd Skynyrd itself carried forward with Ronnie's younger brother, Johnny Van Zant, stepping in as lead singer, ensuring that every performance became a tribute to Ronnie's memory. Fans worldwide keep his spirit alive through memorials, gatherings, and stories, turning Ronnie into not just a rock icon, but a lasting symbol of hope, unity, and connection. Ronnie Van Zant's immortal spirit. The death of Ronnie Van Zant was a devastating tragedy, yet it forever secured his place in the history of music. From humble beginnings in a small garage in Jacksonville, Lynyrd Skynyrd rose to become a global legend, carrying Ronnie's voice and vision to millions. Though his life was cut short, Ronnie lives on through timeless songs, the devotion of fans, and the memories of close friends like Gary Rossington. His spirit remains unbroken, reminding the world that true legends never truly die. They continue to echo across generations.